a man who came to me in the mid 90s, who had been on an interagency deep black project group. He says, I was on a committee in 1974, so almost 50 years ago, where we could push a button. The skies would be filled with all kinds of these man-made UFOs. They could attack or do certain actions.
Wow.
And it would be, it would create such fear. And he said, because the president and the Congress don't know we have these assets, they would be stampeded into all kinds of responses. And so would the public and the press. So if he was the only man I had met with who had been in a top secret operation like that, I would have discounted it. But I've met many of them who know about this agenda. And so that is my biggest concern, is that if the public and the media aren't aware of all this, and the president and the National Security Council are, and most of the Congress, virtually all of them, then they could all be deceived in this kind of operation. So I think that's my biggest concern. And when I was on a 4-week trip until recently, and all this nonsense broke, you and I were texting back and forth. And I said, yep, this is what we predicted. Most people who look at my materials from the 90s went, wow, Dr. Greer was saying that this is the kind of direction they're going to move in the future. So my concern is that as we move forward with a dispositive disclosure on this, and now the Congress has gotten behind a pathway to do that they could actually push that button. And that's a very big concern of mine.
It sounds like there's a sector of people that are uninformed. And so a lot of that.
Everybody.
Yeah. So what are the questions that you get when you do these presidential briefings and everybody at the top of their group? What kind of questions are they asking you?
Like the ones you're asking. They don't know anything. I mean, interestingly, it was, I remember meeting years ago back in the early 2000s with a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, who ironically was from the state of Nevada, which is where Area 51, Nellis Air Force Base is. And it was very funny how that meeting happened. I was put on one of those little golf carts at McCarran Airport in Las Vegas. Yes. And I was moved in clandestinely to what looked like a janitor's closet. And it ended up being a place where VIPs could meet, and the senator and his chief of staff were in there. And we have this very extensive meeting about this. And, he says, look, this is my home state. I'm on the Senate Intelligence Committee. I've heard these things, but I have never been briefed on it or read into it. So now you take that experience that I've had here and all over the world with senior government officials, and they're really, I feel very compassionate for them, because everyone thinks, oh, you're the president, you're this general, you're this cabinet member. Most of them don't know anything. The ones who have known things, like Vice President Cheney, he was on this covert deep black committee since 70s and 80s, way back. And they're embedded in various places in government, but their job is to actually turn to their colleagues. Let's say you're a corrupt senator or congressman who knows about this. Because you're part of a club, it's like doctors believe each other, lawyers believe each other, NASCAR racers. But here's what happens. They turn to their peerage, let's call it, and say, oh, none of this is true. If it were true, I would know about it. I've been involved in all kinds of projects, and this is what they're trained to do. There's actually a facility on my way out to Charlottesville, Virginia, where Thomas Jefferson's house is. You go by a town called Culpeper, Virginia, and out in the country there's a place simply called The Farm. And this is where they take people to learn how to very professionally and convincingly lie, deceive. They could pass polygraphs, but I know people who've gone through The Farm, and it's a very effective training program, but diabolical in many ways. Not for normal, let's call it spycraft, but for folks doing this, where they're actually involved in a criminal and illegal operation that nobody is allowing the key people. Now, remember, in the Constitution, if you do things that, the reason I'm saying these programs are unconstitutional and criminal is that I can prove in a court of law from all the people I briefed that, and it's not just our country, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, that if you're at that level, let's say you're the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, Danica, which is like the CIA for the military. It's the CIA civilian. Defense Intelligence Agency is for the whole military. And I have briefed the director, the head guy at the DIA. He wasn't given told where the washroom was on this issue. And so I was actually brought in to brief him at his conference room. And he went over, this is really kind of comical, he went over to his bookshelf and he grabs a little, like you get at a toy store, a little E.T. doll. He says, "This is all I've ever gotten for my inquiries through channels at the Defense Intelligence Agency." Someone just was making fun of him. So I'm going, yes, I'm not surprised that's happened, because I, prior to you, briefed all these other senior officials who have been also denied access. When in '93, when I met with the director of the CIA and learned that he and the president had been denied access, that's when I knew we were in big trouble.
So if they don't know anything, and if they're not part of this deep black covert group, are they so bad? Is the government so bad? Are they a different level of it? Maybe like just a one step below? Can we trust the government?
Oh, well, I think even the founding fathers would say you never just trust the government. That's why we're supposed to have the fourth estate, the media and the public, and elections. But the problem is if you can't blame people for what they don't know or don't even know the questions to ask. So getting back to your point, many of the things that people are, when I meet with these sort of folks, that what they're asking is, to be honest with you, they know less than someone who has looked at the documentary Unacknowledged, which you can still see for free on Amazon Prime or Hulu or Tubi or whatever, because they're so busy with a million other pressing issues that this issue, until it gets put on their radar, and someone says, you need to take a look at this.
Yeah.
But these people are very busy. It's very hard to get them to focus on something that has been deliberately relegated to the realm of kooks and conspiracy theory.
It's going to rise to the top of the to-do list, though, with everything that's been going on lately, it seems.
It is. It's beginning to get there. And now the problem is, about a year ago, I'll say this, I need to be careful what I'm saying here. In February of 2022, I was contacted by an extremely senior person who had been tasked with looking into this. And this was someone who should have had an all-access pass on everything black budget and classified. He's at that level. And he said, I know that we're being deceived. And we now realize that. They had been chasing their tails for a couple years since the first bill was passed, mandating that the government and the Pentagon report to Congress on this. But they've never gotten anything meaningful. So this guy turned to me, he says, "Can you help us?" I said, "Oh, yeah. What do you want?" So we're in this secure facility. A SCIF is a secure compartmented information facility. It's classified, and you give up your cell phone, and it's electronically, all this stuff. And I gave him everything. So what I'm doing right now, I have handed off about a 4 or 5 terabyte hard drive that is a massive intelligence collection that we have. And in it, I name every facility, every corporation, where the gates are, where the deep underground bases are, etc. And based on that, in the last year, they've been able to hit pay dirt. They've been able to get in, but it's dangerous. It's very dangerous. We got put on the watch group list, which is the kill list.
Were the Men in Black just about to show up? Are the Men in Black real?
If you like this clip and you want to hear the whole episode, click at the bottom of your screen.